It's shocking video. A sheriff fatally shoots a judge inside his judicial chambers. In this surveillance video, you can see the judge, Kevin Mullins, trying to reason with Kentucky Sheriff Mickey Stines right up to the moment.
A sheriff walked into a private judge's chamber and unalived them.
Deputies are coming in trying to figure out what's going on, and then it turns out that their commander is the one that assassinated the judge.
How a sheriff and a judge really ended up on this collision course.
Maybe it proved what he suspected. Maybe he caught the judge in a lie. But it was something he saw in that phone that made him go from 0 to 100.
He was in a state of active psychosis. They were able to go ahead and determine that he was in that state.
I don't know if I've ever seen a situation where a sheriff killed a judge before. This might be unprecedented.
Hill of Justice is sponsored and produced by Jermaine Delmas Studios.
On September 19th, 2024, in the Letcher County Courthouse, that's in Kentucky, a sheriff walked in to a private judge's chamber and unalived them. When we peel back the case, we're going to walk through how a sheriff and a judge really ended up on this collision course between each other. But as usual, with any one of our episodes, there were warning signs there long before this final encounter with this moment. I'm Jerome Hill, and with me is retired Sheriff Victor Hill. So we have an individual, a sheriff, his name is Stines, and we're going to be able to detail, brother, you saw the video, and we're going to go ahead and detail a little bit what happened in this, unaliving. And basically, a civil rights case was being leveled against the sheriff. A woman was suing the sheriff, and 2 days prior to this, he was given a deposition at an attorney's office by the name of Ned Pillersdorf or something of that sort. In that deposition, there were two attorneys that were deposing him, and they were asking him questions. You've been deposed. I've been deposed before. And usually when you're getting that type of, deposition, you're not pretty happy that you're getting deposed. And so some of the questions that they ask you, they try to ask you in 10 different ways, right? Mm-hmm. And trying to get some type of reaction with you for you. Some of it's tense or something like that. I know you've had it. I know
Absolutely.
I've had it for several times. That's been your experience too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, but this was odd at that point in time, because generally, when you're asked those type of questions, of course, your attorney is going to go ahead and vet you to say, hey, guess what? Keep it brief. Yes, no answers. Try not to go ahead and explain any further. Your attorney's prepped you like that too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes and no.
Right.
Try to keep it to yes and no answers.
Just try to keep it to yes or no answers. And so, but there was something off. And the attorneys knew something was off when they were asking him. He seemed distracted. He was confused. They had to ask him multiple times the same question over and over. His concentration was so off, and they noticed that he was acting odd. It took a little bit longer than what it should have. So that was the beginning of that situation. Let's fast forward to 2 days afterwards. He is, and naturally, and I want to talk to you about this portion. Okay. Have you been behind chambers where a judge has had to, you've gone behind private chambers?
Yeah.
It was before. Okay. And for the local portion of this, it could be laid back sometimes. Um, and some of the things that are going on, there could be some bantering going back and forth too. But that is not. But it's easy going because everybody's familiar with everybody, more or less. That was the same situation in this case. Unfortunately, though, I wanted to talk to you about because you were the former sheriff. Do you agree with that type of, let's say, lax concern of safety for the judge? I mean,
Well,
have you
well,
thought
well,
about that before?
well, think about this. The sheriff is responsible for the security of the courthouse and the judges. And if you're a good sheriff, a lot of sheriffs are slack with it, but there's a lot to take in consideration with that when you're tasked with that, because anything can happen at a courthouse, as we saw here in Atlanta with Brian Nichols. So you're supposed to really, if you're on top of your job, you got to make sure no weapons getting in. Look for sniper, uh, NES, explosives, whatever. Those are your concerns every day. But you're the head of security, so no one's going to say anything if you're walking through the judge's chamber or you go see a judge. I mean, you're the person responsible for security. So no one's really thinking, hey, we got to protect a judge from a sheriff. So I don't know so much if it was slack as if it took everybody off guard. But obviously there had to be some type of personal relationship there, because in the video you see the sheriff asking for the judge's phone, which is odd. And the judge actually, hey, look through my phone. So there was something more going on there, and something that made the sheriff very, very emotional. But nobody's going to pat the sheriff down if he say he wants to go see the judge, or the judge says, come up and see me. You're responsible for security. So I mean, that's an odd situation when the man responsible for the security of this person becomes the assassin. That's almost like someone in the Secret Service being the one that actually takes out the president, because the sheriff is the Secret Service for the judges in the courthouse. You see what I'm saying?
Right. So how does that change with federal court? Because they do not behave that way. Federal court.
Well, I mean, on a federal level, marshals kind of take the responsibility. They're kind of like sheriffs on a federal level. So whoever the marshal is for that district, he has the same responsibilities as a sheriff. They're going to protect the federal courthouse. They're going to serve federal civil papers, federal warrants. So they're kind of like the sheriff on a federal level, the U.S. Marshals. So again, if a U.S. Marshal walks down and talks to a judge, no one's going to think anything about, hey, Marshal, we got to take your gun from you. I mean, this is almost unheard of. The sheriff protect judges.
Right.
I don't know if I've ever seen a situation where a sheriff killed a judge before. This might be unprecedented.
It is unprecedented. I don't think that's ever happened in the United States. And that's why we're talking about it. Because one of the main things that it was stunning to everybody was this is one of those cases where every move of the judge, everyone in the courthouse, even the sheriff, is all on tape because there's cameras everywhere.
That was impressive that the judge actually has a camera in his chambers. Now, what's interesting is you got the camera but no audio, but there's a camera there, which is
Right.
which is interesting, because people working behind their desks. There's usually, most people don't want a camera filming them at work. In their office, they want a camera in the courtroom. They want a camera in the hallway, but not necessarily in the office. Now, sometimes let me tell you, it's not a bad idea, especially if you're a male and you're meeting with a female alone. A camera is not a bad idea, because
Right.
anytime a female was in my office, I always kept the door open, or I had a witness or something like that. But if there's a camera there, then no one can say that anything inappropriate happened. So it's not a bad idea, but you just don't see it a lot. Most people don't have cameras in their actual office. It's usually in a hallway leading to their office, or in the actual open chamber where the business of the court is taking place. But
Right.
interesting that it was there.
Right.
And interesting, I'm sure the sheriff he should have known it was there, because he's responsible for security. Because when I was a
Right.
sheriff, we're responsible for all the cameras. And one of the major responsibilities is making sure someone's manning those cameras to watch it. Because, a camera is really only as good as the person watching it. After the fact, after something has happened, you got evidence. But if someone's watching the camera, then they can call in, hey, there's a problem. We need to get somebody there. And it's interesting. I wonder if these cameras are being monitored or not, because I was a stickler for making sure the cameras were monitored and people are paying attention, because if they're not, that's a problem.
Right. Well, I wouldn't be too concerned about the sound portion of this because they're inside private chambers, and I would think that they wouldn't have sound in there. That's
Uh,
my thought.
let me say this. I didn't have a camera with sound in my office, but I did have it in my conference room.
Mm,
And anytime I met with people in a conference room, because, people's stories always change.
mm,
So, if I wanted to meet with somebody and I thought that could have been a problem, then I met with them in my conference room as opposed to meeting with them in the office. Because if you want to film it and there is no audio, then that leaves to my word versus your word what was actually said.
right.
So, usually
But that
cameras
would be
better.
the case, right? I mean, you kind of want that if you're a judge, saying, I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking, hey, this is about he
Well,
say, she say there.
well, well, like I said, video is great, but it's not as great without audio. Just like audio is
Right.
not all that great without video. It's like the perfect yin yang match. You need both. Okay, we can
Right.
see what's happening, but we would understand a whole lot better what happened if we could hear that conversation. And
Right.
why was
And
it
I'm
that
not
the
quite
sheriff felt comfortable asking for the phone, and then the judge handed to him like, "Yeah, you can see." And obviously, whatever he saw drove him to the edge. It's something he
yeah.
saw in that phone that made him get up and say, because everything else, they're calm, they're talking, and I guess there was some question. There must be something he suspected, and I guess he said, "Well, let me see the phone." And whatever he saw on the phone set him off. Maybe it proved what he suspected. Maybe he caught the judge in a lie, but it was something he saw in that phone that made him go from 0 to 100.
Yeah. So, I guess in that case, I'm thinking about whether if there's something that needed to be recorded, that they would bring a stenographer in or someone else to go ahead and record those matters. So that's why I'm thinking that the audio wasn't uh, the the most or even the main element. In I guess for
I
that
get what you're
office.
saying, but why is the camera there anyway? Obviously, there's some concern if there's a camera there. Did he have the camera there because he wanted to make sure that while he's talking to somebody, he's not accused of something? But, why it had to be there for a reason. And if it's there for that reason, if you're going to have that, you might as well have the audio.
You know, to that point, if you're thinking about, and this is a very rural area in Kentucky, right? And thus, there, as you can see, they were very lax in those chambers. In fact, a bunch of employees are around, but there was some issues, or as I told you, there were cameras all over the place. And you saw earlier in the morning, before he even spoke with the judge and other individuals, he seemed a little bit agitated. He was walking back and forth outside of the courthouse. He kept on looking back at his phone. He looked down at it. He was just pacing all over the place. That happened for a while. And then at lunchtime, something completely odd happened. So he was there with a couple of acquaintances, and they spoke about his reelection. And he mentioned to them, he's never going to make it. And one of them saw his gun, and they mentioned, hey, your gun's pretty big. And in the video, you see him pacing back and forth. You see it not so much. I mean, he's an obese guy.
Hmm.
It wasn't so much on his hip as it was in front of his gut. And
Hmm.
they mentioned how big it was. And they noticed that the serial numbers were filed off of it. And they mentioned that to him. And so there was, of course, in his mind, and we can talk about it now because obviously we saw the video and something like that. It's in his mind. I guess there was some type of reasoning that there was going to be no point of return.
I agree. Well, now when you add that element to it, when you're just looking at the video and you're looking at the fact that he says, "Let me see your phone," and he sees something in the phone, that's one thing. But if he walks in there with a gun with a serial number scratch off, that shows premeditation right there. So
Right.
that meant that he pretty much was thinking about doing what he was doing. What do we know, has anything come out about what that conversation was about or why he did it? What was it
No.
that he was worried? What was it that made him mad at this judge? Do we know that? Or we have, or do we have any speculation? I know speculation is dangerous, but any idea what he was upset about?
There were rumors. Now let's go into those rumors. Naturally, it shocked this sleepy town that this unaliving happened, and everybody's trying to make sense of how a good-natured sheriff would do something like this to a judge. Now, the rumors mill was going around basically saying matters such as this, that the judge was pretty heavy-handed and happened to be a bit heavy-handed with members of course, the sheriff's family, and that there were other rumors saying that these are all unfounded, by the way.
Okay.
That the judge in itself was taking on favors and giving lighter sentences to individuals, depending on the kickback or the favor that was given to him.
What
And
kind of
it
favor?
sparked
I
those
know speculation, but what kind of sexual favor?
sexual favors, and of course leading to lighter sentences for some, and that if he had a mean streak about him, he would give heavier sentences to others. They just didn't like the judge demeanor. There's a group of people that felt as though he was fair, and then of course there was other people who felt like this is what happened because this was the type of judge he was. But there has been nothing that really came about of those things. They're just rumors at this point in time until we get into a court setting. So that's one. The other part happens to be is that on that same day, after lunch, you get to see on the video a bunch of individuals around the judge's desk, and he's speaking with them. You see Stines, the sheriff, come in, and he's at the door, and he's looking at everybody, and then all of a sudden, according to one of the people that were in that room that day, they said he looked angry and upset, and they ordered the sheriff ordered everybody out immediately.
Yeah.
And you saw them piling out afterwards.
Right.
He then he closes the door, he sits down, and he starts really taking a look at his phone, making small talk with the judge at first, looks at his phone, and he video calls someone. Who that person is, I don't know at this moment. Gets done with that conversation, talks to the judge, and tries to make another call that did not go through. At the same time, during this whole process, he gets up, checks the door a couple of times, and checks the back door a couple of times. There's nobody there. He sits down, and then obviously tries and asks for, of course, the judge's phone. Judge takes a look at it. They believe that he was trying to search for a name or a number or something like that. As to your point, something agitated him where he goes up to the door and then at that point in time locks it and then has an exchange with him and then pulls out the weapon and then fires. But
it's very... No, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
But I think there's a little bit more to it. I don't know if he was looking for a name and number in that phone. I think he was looking for something else because he after whatever he saw, that's when he gets up and then he ends up unaliving the judge. I don't know if he saw a picture or if he saw a text, but I think he was looking for more in that phone than a name of contact. Because if it was just a contact, he could ask the judge, "Hey, look, you got such and such number. Can I get the number or whatever like that?" and
Mhm.
that just didn't occur.
Right.
So I think there's a little bit more to it than that. I do.
Oh, so getting to that part, he unalives him. Okay, people start piling out of the courthouse. He walks casually out of there. People can't put it in their mind that he was the shooter.
Right.
They can't. They
Yeah,
can't
they just
put
hear
that
shots
process that.
fired. Right. Yeah,
Right.
because it can't be the sheriff. Right.
Right. Can't be the
Exactly.
sheriff.
Right.
So you see other officers come in. Okay, they got their long guns. They're in the corridor trying to figure out who could this be. The sheriff comes behind them, and they couldn't even believe it that it was the sheriff. They and he get what he does then is he pulls out his gun, puts it up, and surrenders at that point in time. And they're stunned. They're completely stunned.
Do they handcuff him?
They do handcuff him. Okay,
Okay, good.
so but then basically, I guess everybody's trying to process it in their head about what's going on. And you can tell after they handcuff him and sit him down, he's saying words that are just really not making sense. Okay. And he asked them, please don't shoot and kill me. That's what he's asking them. Please don't shoot and kill me. But then we find out after the arrest and in the court documents, the medical records reveal this crazy thing. He was in a state of active psychosis. They were able to go ahead and determine that he was in that state, that he was disoriented, confused, unable to understand what he was doing and what had happened at that point in time. So this is where we stand right now. We stand right now with them being able, with that video, to see how his behavior was well before the shooting, how he was interacting with other people, because other individuals said before this shooting happened, it didn't seem like he was well. And then he does the shooting and he's still acting the same way, unwell. So I wanted to throw that on you because naturally, I can tell you what we're looking at. We're looking at a long court process that might even take years to resolve.
And we're dealing with a mental health issue as well. You know,
Bingo.
I tell you, here's what people got to understand. These are elected positions, and anyone can get elected. So once you're elected, I think there's this strange thing in people's minds that, okay, well, if you're an elected official, that you're not prone or subject to the same things any other human is prone or subject to. You know, just because you hold an elected position, be it sheriff or judge, they do what other people do. They die, they get sick. And it's very possible that they could somehow have a mental health issue. You know, when people run for office, they don't do mental health screenings. And we kind of discussed this a little in the past about mental health in officers on one of our live shows. But usually the only mental health check that a person gets in law enforcement is the initial hiring screening. And after that, that's it. I mean, I've been a cop nearly 30 years, and the only time I remember that is when it got hired. Hey, we're going to check to make sure you're okay. Well, once I became the sheriff, I started seeing a lot of behavior in certain people where I would have to order, hey, have them go see a counselor, our psychologist, to make sure they're okay, because there's certain things that some of them started saying and doing that didn't make sense. And, you know, a lot of people don't want to do that because when you tell a person that they have to go and get themselves checked, nobody takes that well. Whether they need it or not, that's just something nobody wants to do, or no one wants someone to tell them that they have to do it. And you know, being a law enforcement officer, especially in an area where you're dealing with a lot of urban crime, drive-by shootings, and you got a lot of carnage. And sometimes it's not just all the murders and carnage like that, but I mean the things that you see that's just tragic. Like when we had a man caught up in the wheel well of a MARTA bus and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And you we're the people who respond, and we see that, and everyone have their different thresholds. Not
Mhm.
everybody is like you and I and can see that and process it and go home and be okay. Some people, they take that home with them. So each person has a different mental threshold, and I think that again, I've said it before, I think that there needs to be 3 to 6 months screening to make sure that what officers have seen or been subjected to in that time hasn't affected them. And then also, I think things need to be looked at what can make people resilient to that level of strength and that level of being exposed to carnage and human suffering. Because not everybody can watch human suffering and react to it the same.
Correct. Correct. I think what we're looking at also is because of all the camera angles that was in that courthouse, um, and how they were able to go ahead and take a look at his behavior, the eyewitnesses on what he's saying. This is setting up for a great insanity case that he may be able to go ahead and work into his favor, and especially for the defense. I mean, they're going to have a field day with this.
Well, let me say this. Based on what we've seen and based on what you described, it legitimately looks like he might have gone into some type of insanity state of mind. A lot of people, after they do something, then okay, that's something they want to try as a defense. Like people faking injuries in order to win a lawsuit or something. But based on what you're describing, based on how he acted at the deposition, how he acted with the people, how he acted after the fact, that's a lot of acting, and he doesn't appear to be some trained method actor that studied acting to that degree where he can go into a role for that long and that well. I mean, even if you look at his body language when he walks in, he clearly looks disturbed about something.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, he clearly looks. A lot of times when you start seeing people go into a different bad mental state, their physiology changes, and it's something that if you're around a lot like we were, you instantly see it. You go on a call, and it's not just the facial expressions, but the body language that something here is off, and that they're being
Mm.
affected mentally.
Are we at the point where we could safely say, in front of a judge's chamber, we have maybe a deputy posted there and maybe some gun lockers before you even get into the judge's chamber? Are we at that point? I mean, we're talking about school shootings.
We
Are
are,
we?
but we probably are. But think about it. What deputy is going to tell the sheriff, "Hey, give me your gun before you go in there and see the judge"? And then if that's the case, suppose the deputy goes in and kills the judge. I mean, the problem with this, I don't know if we got a real solution to it, because you got the protector becoming the killer. So I
Right.
mean, and I know this is a much higher level, but I mean, that's like the Secret Service having to check each other. Their job is to protect the president. But if they're like, hey, well, you can't be around the president with a weapon, okay, well, then who's going to protect the president? This is something I don't think anyone really saw coming. And
Right.
mental health is something that nobody can really know when a person's going to have an emotional or mental breakdown. But
Right.
these are the people charged, and that's why it took everybody off guard. The deputies are coming in trying to figure out what's going on, and then it turns out that their commander is the one that assassinated the judge.
Right.
And
Correct.
and when you see the sheriff, your reaction is not going to be, "Hey, sheriff, look, I need your gun. Hey, sheriff, I'm gonna do such and such. They're only gonna do that if you command them to. It's kind of like at my jail. Everyone had to be searched when they went into jail, and I told them everyone, include me. And there was even hesitation there. I know I come through
Mm.
and I'm trying to get searched. Well, what? Hey, I said everyone gets searched. I know I'm the sheriff, but that's my order. I need you to do a thorough job. There's a reason I'm doing it this way. And
Mm.
people are very, very hesitant because they're like, okay, well, you're my boss. I don't want to really search you thoroughly. And I had to actually command them to do it. There's that psychological block there.
Yeah.
So when it becomes a person the head of your security is your assassin. I don't think that's ever been thought through. I'm a pretty thorough guy, and I try to think through a lot of scenarios. And not once have I ever thought about a situation like that. Well, what
Right.
happens if the sheriff decides? You know what I'm saying?
Right. And I'm at the point where we shouldn't do that. And I'll tell you why. It's because, we can't live in our fears. Right. And
Exactly.
this was a one off. This was unprecedented. We
Yes.
don't see this as being a habit or a pattern. So we shouldn't be doing stuff like that. And that's why I posed the question. Some people will take the bait on that. I just don't think that we're at that point. It's a tragedy, no doubt, but we're not at that point.
No, and I don't know if we can ever get to that point. Like I said, if we can't trust the sheriff, usually you can't trust the sheriff because he's weak and incompetent and he can't even protect himself. So it's kind of like I call it Barney Fife syndrome, like what we see in my county now. But when you're talking about, okay, the sheriff is the one doing the assassination, that's crazy. The closest I've ever seen to that is DeKalb County, where the sheriff ordered a guy that beat him in an election to be assassinated. But
Right.
never a situation where the sheriff himself actually carries it out in the courtroom to a judge, a person that he's assigned or legally responsible to protect. Like you said, unprecedented.
Yeah. There's a couple of reflections that I want to go ahead and mention before we leave out. I want to go ahead and thank all the subscribers, all the individuals who comment and like our portion of our commentary on these shows. It's been a year since we released our last our very first video, and we sincerely thank each and every one of you. We want to go ahead and let each and every one of you also know to continue to spread the word. And if you like the commentary and continue to like our commentary, please go ahead and subscribe, like, share with other individuals. And we really, really deeply appreciate it. And with that being said, until next time, brother.
Thank you.